religion. So let's pick up how this all unfolded from here. Just to quickly summarize. In that area of what we now call Iran, Turkey, and the Caucasus Mountains, you had two advanced races at the same time. You had the Martian race, which came down and survived there and came out of there after the cataclysm involving Venus, 7,000 years ago or so. But you also had another race, which the Sumerian text called the Anunnaki, a reptilian race. And they interbred in this program, or programs that are described in the Sumerian texts. And interestingly, they describe how this Anunnaki did this interbreeding by using what we would call test tube methods. Now, of course, when these tablets were found in 1850, the idea of creating life in test tubes, utterly ludicrous, no longer. And so you had the interbreeding between the white race, the Martian race, and the Anunnaki. And the outcome of that was what appeared to be a human form, is what we'll call it today. But within that white race were particular bloodlines that were very, very reptilian. And again, you have to look in detail in The Biggest Secret to see the enormous documentation of this, but it's these bloodlines, this particularly the white reptilian, the Anunnaki Martian bloodlines, that actually have run the world ever since. Demonstrably, the white race took the world over. They came out of the Caucasus Mountains and this area of the world in two basic ways. Go one way first, by land. They came out of the Caucasus Mountains, and incidentally, what do Americans call white people? Caucasian. Why do they call them after some mountains in the Near East? Because that's where the white race came from. They came across land into Europe, and they changed their names. They were the Scythians, they were the Sumerians, they were many different names, and if you follow the movement of people, you find that they became the white race of Europe. They became the Anglo-Saxon race because the Angles and the Saxons were simply different names for the same race. They became the Scandinavian peoples, they became the British, they became the French, they became the European white race. And within this white race were these Anunnaki bloodlines, these reptilian bloodlines. And these were the ones, when you do the research and the genealogy, that ended up again and again and again in the positions of power. Political, royal, economic, all of it. And so, not only did they come across land in that way, much earlier, around 3000 BC, through a white race called the Phoenicians, they went by sea to Britain. And what we call the British culture, which of course has had such an effect on passing on that culture to the rest of the world, is actually the Phoenician culture. It comes from the Near East. And the proof of that is endless in the artifacts and the legends and the stories that have been left. For instance, what you see there in that depiction on the coin, an ancient coin, is a Phoenician goddess called Barati. And on the other side, you see the classic depiction by the British of their goddess, Britannia. And they are the same, because Britannia was Barati. The Phoenicians worshipped two deities. One was the male, Barat, one was the female, Barati. And she became Britannia, and Barat and Barati became Baritan, and the British. The British culture is, in effect, the Phoenician culture. Not only that, when you look at the names given to the goddesses and what have you, or in the Indus Valley, what we call the Hindu culture, they are the same. They are very, very close to the name Bharat and Bharati, because this white race, as I said earlier, also went in and created the Indus Valley Hindu culture. No accident that all the major religions in the world that were prisoners came out of this same area of the Middle and Near East. In Britain are white horses scored into the hillside. This is supposed to be the oldest one. It's a place called Uffington in Wiltshire. And it's been dated to around 3000 BC. That is precisely the time the Phoenicians arrived by sea into Britain, bringing the British culture as it became. Now, why would the Phoenicians score horses in the hillsides, the chalk hillsides of Britain? Very simple. The Phoenicians were sun worshippers. This was a Phoenician symbol of the sun. This is a Phoenician high priestess. Again, you see the swastika. The swastika was a Phoenician symbol of the sun. Quite a positive symbol, and what the Nazis did, because they understood this, is they turned it round to indicate the negative, because they understood the nature of the sun as well. This is a Phoenician stone found in Britain. There again, you see the swastika. And what we call the British culture came from the Near East. Another thing that these advanced people within the Phoenician culture understood was the fact that the earth has through it and around it what is known as an energy grid or grids. These are force lines of energy. Some people call them ley lines, some people call them dragon lines in China, meridians, whatever. Where these lines of force cross, you create a vortex. Where many of these lines cross, you create a colossal vortex. And therefore you have enormous energy which you can use to create and do various things. This guy was an Englishman in a place called Herefordshire, and one day he was on his horse at the top of a hillside, and he suddenly looked down into the valley and saw these lines in a sort of psychic way all over the place, straight lines, and they connected the sacred wells, the sacred places of worship, the points where the churches were built, the hillsides, etc. And this now, as we have moved on, has been confirmed by the scientific world, those with an open mind anyway, that this grid system actually exists like a web around the world. Now, where these ley lines cross, in their most powerful way, where most of them cross, just happens to correspond with where the ancients had their most sacred ceremonies and their most sacred places. Stonehenge and places like that were built on them. So where the lines come in and the vortex is created, that is where they built the Stonehenges. The Aveburys, another stone circle and energy complex in Britain. That's where they built all over the world their temples to access this energy. This is Avebury in Wiltshire. Now this is interesting. I used to live near here, and the Phoenicians built this with their knowledge. Now the Phoenicians, I would suggest, and the evidence is presented in The Biggest Secret, were originally a Martian race. What people like Richard Hoagland have found, who's investigated the Cydonia region of Mars, where they've found pyramids, etc., and other non-natural creations, is that if you look at the way that the various pyramids and non-natural points relate to each other in this area of Mars called Cydonia,